You are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
Here we go again on a rainy Thursday in Austin, Texas. Let's get right into the B2B marketing mindset, shall we? I'm Pete Monfre. This is my co-host Bill Lowell, broadcasting from the back seat of a 1972 Buick Skylark.
Wow, that's
Very nice.
Exactly right. Well, thank you.
Looks like an office, though. You've done well with the restoration.
Well, when you live in the car, you gotta make it home.
You want to make it nice. Yeah, I know.
That's it.
I know. Hey, I'm gonna let the theme play just a little bit of the background. But today's topic: focus groups, how, when, and why to use them, plus stories of focus groups gone horribly wrong. We've got the guy that actually wrote the book on focus groups, and you'll want to stick around for the horror stories towards the end and our final thoughts at the end of the episode. So every week we go live on LinkedIn to demystify marketing, help you attract more and close more deals and grow your business. And there's a lot of information on every episode, a lot more information at B2B Mindset, B2BMarketingMindset.com. Links in it doesn't matter what I say, the actual link is in the comments. I want to mention also we are now broadcasting on Twitter and Facebook, as well as LinkedIn and YouTube, and of course every major podcast platform. Aren't you proud? Are you happy about that?
Well, that's pretty exciting,
We can't make mistakes now because there's too many people watching.
I know it. It's going to be bad. I'm feeling very nervous.
Are you nervous? I would leave the music running a little bit because before we jump into it, I've had a number of people. There's our little theme song here. Ask about our theme music. What song is it? What artist, etc. Except for, of course, the people who were there that night. But so here's a little behind-the-scenes trivia. So that's me. I'm the one playing guitar and yelling at the band, and a random group of musicians making up the song on the spot live at the Townsend Theater in Austin, Texas, a couple years ago. So it doesn't really have a name. You can't buy it anywhere. But if you want to help us name the song, you could come up with a name for the song for the show and just put that in the comments. That'll be fun. So let's see what you've got out there, folks. But anyway, that's enough of the housekeeping.
So is this a marketing service that we can have you sell to people if they want a theme song? You guys will just go out and jam and then see where it goes?
Nope.
No, okay.
Nope. Can't pay us enough.
Okay.
We're expensive. Much more expensive than stock music. Now we could have used stock music. There's some, stock music. I find most of it to be kind of cheesy and crappy, but there's some good stuff out there. But I figured, hey, why? I have a professionally recorded original song that took zero amount of work, and there was about 100 people there that night, so maybe some of them will see this and be like, I remember that. But it was really fun. We're just like, hey, let's just make something up. What do you guys think? The audience was like, great, and so that was born. So, but we don't have a name for it. We should. We'll have to have a name. So if you have some name suggestions, put them in the comments. Welcome Twitter. Welcome Facebook. That's kind of neat. But anyway, today focus groups, and this is a great subject because you are the focus group man, and you reminded me that you wrote this book on focus groups years ago, and then I guess we designed it.
You did all the illustrations and everything.
And did all the illustrations. Wow, a long time ago.
Yeah.
But why don't we get into it here a little bit with less navel gazing, more subject matter.
Okay.
So I had some questions. I'm just going to ask some questions, and we'll talk a little bit about things that have happened in focus groups. But I think it's really important. Let's not assume everybody knows what a focus group is, right? So, what's focus group? I know, but
I'll give you my quick definition. Usually, it depends if you're in person or online. If you're in person, it's probably 8 to 12 individuals that kind of give you their commentary and their thoughts. And I always look at it and I call it group insight. So the important thing is you're going to walk away from that focus group with some good thoughts and ideas. But again, not to be confused with the quantitative data, which might be doing a survey or other things. This is where people tell you what's on their mind and they give you their thoughts. And then I look at it as a group conversation. You really get to draw people out and see what they think and see how they react to things. And it's just
qualitative.
Fun. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And you make a distinction between in-person and online, but they're both focus groups, right? It's just
they're both focus groups,
a little bit different.
Yeah, and with the online focus groups, like for the maximum amount of people that you can handle in person before I think it gets unruly, and we can talk about that, would be 15. So I usually go, the 8 to 12 in person. But if it's online, you're talking, I think, 6 is the ideal number of people, but you could probably get up to 8, but then it's too much to handle and not everybody gets a chance and you don't get a lot of good interaction. So that's why. So,
okay. So, and we'll talk about what your role is in terms of, you really need a facilitator. We'll talk about that in a subsequent segment, but, it seems like part of the advantage of a focus group is you get to see their body language. You get to listen to their tone of voice. You get a lot more input and information than you would, let's say, doing a survey.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And the one thing too, Pete, which I think is so key, and you've been with me on some of these, so you know what we're talking about here. But the other thing, besides those nonverbals, and I'll tell you what we do at our company to help with that. But besides those nonverbals, I mean, so like if somebody is making a confused look like you are right now, I can say, hey, you seem confused, or you look upset with what this other person just said. Tell me what's going on, and then just let them talk and they might tell you, so you're absolutely right. Reading the body language is so important. And I think that's key. Usually when I do an in-person focus group, I always have what I call a professional recorder sitting next to me. I'm obviously an expert in reading body language as well, but usually somebody else, their whole job is to just watch the table. Wow. And see what people are doing, observing how they're responding to people. So we get a lot of extra good input.
You've heard about the bitch resting face. I have the confused resting face, which is really a problem for me, actually. I
just
think,
put your hand under your chin, and then everybody's going to think you're a genius. That's what you have to do.
So, the thinking man.
Yeah.
Well, I think so that facilitator has, there's a lot of things you're doing. You're controlling, what's happening in the focus group. You're kind of looking, you're looking for cues. You're actually interpreting things on the fly.
Yes.
You're analyzing as you go. I think it's, I think this really leads to the next question, which is when do you use a focus group as opposed to, there's so many research choices. And folks, by the way, if you're curious about Bill, it's Business Development Directives, bddonline.com. And so you learn more about this, but give me some use cases where a focus group would be the superior choice.
I can give you hundreds of them, and I've conducted thousands of focus groups in our tenure. But I'll give you a couple.
Time for hundreds, though.
No, I know.
Just saying.
But I'll give you so like when would be? I'll give you like several different examples. Okay, so somebody, even just to get the quick pulse of your customers, getting them together and being able to kind of have them respond. Although sometimes that can be dangerous too, because if somebody complains, you're opening it up for the rest of the people to complain or to hear those complaints. So that could be tough. But you could test your ad campaigns. You could test your PR campaigns. You can test messaging. You and I have done that together. So you do a focus group and you have people respond to some of the messages or the positioning statements that you're thinking about having. I think you can test your competitors' advertising or their messaging or websites or whatever you want to do, compare it to yours. And those are usually some pretty powerful ways to do it. But I've done one of my clients was looking at developing a new pharmacy prototype, and they called it Pharmacy of the Future. We had pharmacists that we got together, and we did a ton of focus groups with pharmacists just to ask them to envision what that would look like and get them to talk about it. So it can be something innovative. It can be something that you're dealing with that's a problem that you just want to develop. It could be somebody who's listening to us that may be in PR or marketing right now. We could get 5 to 10 experts together and just brainstorm on a topic, and they walk away with a great information for a white paper or some downloads or another podcast or a blog post or whatever you want to say. So
all sorts of outputs that come out of it. And I do remember, I think we had 3 or 4 different television ads, and we were testing those. But I think the important point was, and I don't remember who the client was, so it might have been Batzner, but I don't remember. So, if you gather your family up, and this informal focus groups go on all the time in marketing, right? The client takes the work and goes and asks their wife and their mother and their neighbor, okay, and they get this feedback, and it's not worth a shit, honestly. You mentioned, look, this was the pharmacy thing was targeted to pharmacists, so you want people who match your target profile in that room. So selecting the people is actually really important.
It's absolutely critical.
And you talk about, nightmares is one of the things we're going to talk about, but you mentioned that the wrong people in the room are going to be a nightmare, right? Because
for so many reasons.
Maybe you get somebody very cynical who hates all forms of advertising and marketing. Is there any kind of screening that you do, almost like a jury?
Oh, absolutely. In fact,
I think I remember.
By the way, that's another reason you could do a focus group for jury trials, to see how people are going to perceive the way that somebody's going to do the prosecution or the defense. So those are things we've done as well. So, but to your point, absolutely. I think when you sit down, one of the things that we do to begin with, and I don't want to get too complicated, but we have to put together a profile of who we want in that focus group. And then that's where we start doing our selecting. And so building the profile is critical. And that could be demographics. That could be where people live. I mean, there could be a lot of different things.
Psychographics, their perceptions. The guy carrying a noose, might not be the guy that makes it into the jury pool.
Yeah. And by the way,
brings his own noose.
Yeah. Sometimes, like you said, but even if you had the person that hated every type of advertising, sometimes, I mean, if they still fit the profile, that person might be good in that focus group. Because one of the things that I always say is, if everybody agrees and I walk away and go back and tell my client that, everybody loved this and that, what have we done? It's like, I need to hear when people disagree or what they think, because that makes it for a better conversation.
Well, so this is a psychological thing where people want to be positive. They don't want, most people, not me, but most people. And they're gonna, if they only tell you what you want to hear, the data is not really that good. And I think across all kinds of marketing research, it's really the ugly stuff, the bad stuff that really what we're listening for. But if you have 8 or 9 people in a room all agreeing, there's got to be something wrong with that, because I've never seen that happen before. But that's a great point. I mean, a good facilitator is going to make people comfortable and make sure that they understand that everything is fair game: the good, the bad, the ugly, the embarrassing, there's no right or wrong in a focus group, is there?
No. And to your point, one of the things that I do, and I think a really good facilitator will do, not to pat myself on the back too much, is you set the stage to begin with. So because you mentioned that people need to feel comfortable. So it's like, you got to let them know that, I hope that you'll feel really comfortable with this. And if you have a differing opinion, we need to hear that. And, that's going to really help our clients. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. You need to set the stage. So, by the way, you also set the stage to control the lunatics too, because you'll get a few of those sometimes. And by setting the stage, you can prevent some of that,
Well, the next point is what can go wrong with a focus group. So, I mean, sometimes, let's say somebody gets through the screening, they're disruptive. You kick them out?
Yes.
But you do it nicely.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong.
First,
no. First, you might give them a warning or whatever, and then, sometimes you just call on their behavior. It's kind of your typical stuff. The first time Okay, I'll give you a couple of tricks. The first time somebody's acting up, you give them a nonverbal. So either you give them a stare down, or you're quiet for a second and just kind of let everybody focus on what they just did. Or sometimes I don't even look at them anymore. I just look away every time I ask the question, because sometimes they're the first to jump in and they always want to talk. So you don't look at them. But if somebody starts to act up, I think the best thing to do is just to start saying, hey, I noticed you've been doing this. If you don't mind, I'd like to hear from some other people, or could you just kind of hold back for a little bit? Give them a nice warning. And then the second time they do it, you might just say, I'm seeing kind of some disruptive behavior, and I need to hear from everybody. And this is kind of, disrupting the group. So we need to do something. Third time they're out of there. I just ask them to leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
And rarely do we have to do that, but I've done that several times.
Well, and then you have I think the problem, the other, focus group nightmare is the dominant person who not only just dominates the conversation, but the other people will then start to echo that person's opinions, and they're not really giving their opinions. I've seen that happen. And so, I think that's a nightmare. We're a lot of everything we do in terms of research has to do with the integrity of the data. Right.
Yes.
It's like that's the whole main thing. It's how you phrase the questions.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to lead them on or ask leading questions. You have to be very neutral in your language. A lot of work goes into that, by the way. Yeah. And is that the book behind you? It says focus groups right there. Did we design that?
It is. It is.
Talk about
beautiful design. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I recognize Michael DeMilo's illustration there, and Heidi designed that book.
Did she? That's great. And then you guys got some designs in here, but the whole book is a step-by-step process, if you remember correctly.
Can people buy that book from you or from Amazon?
It used to be. It used to be, but it's so old now. Yeah, I haven't.
To get
I don't even know.
Print.
Okay, we could probably do. I was thinking about updating it, and we might, but I hate to say it, but most of the techniques are still the same. I give them a step by step. If you want to do your own focus group, what do you do? And so it's a pretty hands-on book.
Yeah, and we'll talk about. We'll put that back on Amazon.
All right.
But there's a lot of things that can go wrong with focus groups because I think you're just dealing with people. And people can be super inconsistent. And it's really, but if you think about it, your marketing is dealing with people, and you're dealing with people's behavior, which can be super inconsistent. I think that, marketers often will so carefully design and package their idea and just so, precise and all this, and they let it out into the world and they find out, wow, the world's a super messy place. And it just, you can only do so much. But I think, and you're not just asking people, do you like this? Do you, I think the questions are pretty detailed because you want those detailed answers, because I think the worst answer you could get is, I like it. I don't like it. Well, what does that mean? Nothing.
Exactly. And by the way, that would be a great facilitation question. What do you mean there?
I've been doing this for years, and I have no idea what you're talking about, sir.
Yeah. But that's why. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's why the thing that's so important, Pete, is that I always tell people you need to either do odd number of focus groups, and I'm not saying have an odd focus group, but odd number, because you are so right. What happens if I have everybody that either agrees, or what happens if everybody it's chaos, or what happens if we really feel it's one way? Well, you better do another focus group and see, and then maybe a third, because that way you can kind of draw some comparisons, some consistencies from those focus groups.
Right, because one may have some anomalies in it that three will even out the curve a little bit more, or something like that. And so, the question on the screen now, why are professional facilitators important? Now, I want to give a disclaimer, because we often talk about research and we talk about the importance of an objective third party, which oftentimes is us. All right, we're not being self-serving in this case. And like you said, you can do focus groups on your own, but if you want good data, you need somebody that knows how to do this, who knows how to deal with those difficult people, who knows how to develop questions that aren't leading, that knows how to read between the lines in the way that people answer, right? And so give me some more reasons why professional facilitation, I think it just basically equals better data.
Yeah. Well, you know, I also tell people, and you're really good at this as well, because you're an expert in the sales process as well. People that are really good listeners, I think, make great facilitators because you're listening to so many things. And just like you do on this podcast, all of a sudden a question is raised from something that I say or one of our other guests have said, and then it causes another question. And I think that's, those are really key traits. But, one of the things that I always enjoy is, sometimes you might walk into a focus group with 15 questions. All right. And I tell my clients no more than 15. And I'm only going to ask 10. Because the fewer you ask, the better the conversation, and the best focus groups that I've had, and this is the reason for a good facilitator, I've asked one question and we've had a conversation, but every answer for those questions came out of that focus group. So,
Wow.
So it just depends. So why as a facilitator? Because just like you said, they're unbiased, I don't care about the outcome. I just want to get the information for my client. That's the key. So I'm not invested. Some people might be invested or whatever. I'll tell you a story if I can, and this will be it. So we were doing the largest study ever done in the state of Wisconsin on children, and so we were doing focus groups in almost every major city, and that also included the predominant minority population of the kids as well. My client was a single mother. And she came with me on some of the focus groups. Now, she usually didn't say anything, but she served as the professional recorder. There were times that those kids would say stuff and she would come out of those focus groups and tell me things. And I'm like, that is like so biased. You're just taking your stance from where you are,
Right.
And I would remind her, I think you're just thinking about this differently. So people have their own biases. And I think that's key. But the other thing is keeping the conversation going, just like you do with this podcast all the time and that you've done with your clients,
Well, and then there's another type of research that I do a lot, and they're executive interviews. So maybe it's a 15-minute interview. You have maybe 10 questions if you're lucky. And you want to be real respectful of that. It's the customer of our client, right? And so, and again, I tell people this, you can do this yourself, but here's the drawback of that. Your customers, again, this is a psychological thing where they don't want to hurt your feelings, right? They're not going to say somebody you do a lot of business with, and they're like, listen, Bill, man, you guys, and then they whip some negative stuff on you. They're not going to do that generally. So you get to the objective third party. Also, then those surveys can be anonymous. Like, for example, if you do a focus group, they can speak their mind because the client won't necessarily know who said what, right? And so
unless they're behind the mirror,
but the focus group people don't need to know that. But the whole idea is you want them to be candid. You want them to actually tell you the truth. You don't want them to worry about feelings or sugarcoating, because you need to know a lot of the research, we're looking for problems and solutions to problems. So if everybody's like, no, you guys are the greatest, it's not helpful. Okay. We already know that. We have problems. We're trying to solve problems, or we need your honest perception. And again, I'm a little late on the uptake, but we're going to be doing a research program ourselves about our company, and really going out to the general public, and just to try to measure awareness and perception and some of these sort of things. And so that is an anonymous survey, so people can really say whatever they want. And I do expect to see some negative things, and I might go and cry in the corner just for a moment, but it's okay. Those are the things that maybe we need to fix.
But let's go back to your executive interviews. And let's go back to the focus group for just a second. If somebody said something negative, okay, at least when you're doing an executive interview for one of your customers, that's just one thing, and that's one customer. Sometimes if people are doing this themselves, they get really emotional, and then they're just going to focus on that one thing, and they won't get off of it, when that really might be like just the most minor thing, and you miss all of these other really good things. And so that's another reason why you want to have somebody who's unbiased kind of listening for
A
that.
skilled facilitator can move that on without sort of contaminating the pool, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or as I like to say, peeing in the pool. You don't want to pee in the pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, I think that that's
but
true.
so
And then,
what are, we promised some focus group nightmares.
okay.
So we're getting towards the end here. We want to make sure we keep our promise. What do you got for me?
I'll give you a few of them. I got probably three that, I mean, I've got many, but I'll give you three right off
I
the bat.
figured you might.
One, and I don't know if these are nightmares or just interesting stories. Okay. So with one focus group, there was this one gentleman that was in the focus group, and he kept on agreeing with everything that this really attractive woman was saying. And then he would interrupt and agree with her. And if somebody disagreed, he was defending her. I mean, it was just obnoxious. And we actually had to take him out. I mean, we really tried a few times, but he was like falling in love. And I'm really serious about this. It was like he just couldn't get over and by the way, I think later after the focus group, they did, I don't know what they got together, but I saw them yakking with each other and stuff. So that was one
Wow.
where it was like, oh, it was just really embarrassing. I have one that was on a video focus group that we've done, and this was really embarrassing more for, well, I'll tell you the story, then you can tell me who's embarrassed. But so we're doing an online focus group, and this was with a bunch of oncology cancer patients, and we were trying to come up with some things for this one organization, and one of the participants, she had her computer set up like in the upstairs hallway of, so like there's the hallway from the bedrooms and stuff, but a lot of people might have like a platform that they have their office, or they have a chair or whatever. Her computer was there with like a little desk. And so like behind her, you could see if somebody was walking by, right? So we're going on and on and on, and everybody is doing this. And by the way, we have a platform where our clients can be behind the mirror and watch the focus group without participants knowing this. But all of a sudden, this woman's husband, unbeknownst to her, so she's yakking and talking and saying what's going on. He's walking up and down naked from the bed. You could just tell from the bedroom to the bathroom. And then all of a sudden he comes back, and I'm like, and then he goes back. It was like three different times, and we were like just going crazy. So after the focus group was done, it was so embarrassing, but the client, all they did is talk about that guy. You know what I mean? I was like, you mean you missed all the rest of the good stuff? So everybody was, their attention was off of that. But I mean, it was a lesson to be learned. It's like, oh, make sure
That's
no one.
funny.
So
We'll have
that
to make
was
sure that we clip this part out and rerun it. That's really funny. Now, are you talking about the online focus group software where
yeah.
it's
I
a
haven't.
virtual mirror? I mean, in
Yeah.
back in the day, you had literally a one-way mirror, or
Right.
is it a two-way mirror? And so you'd have two rooms adjacent to each other, almost like a
Right.
interrogation at the police station. But
Yeah.
not that I would know anything about that. But now we have digital platforms that have that functionality. So I assume that you were talking about, it was a digital focus group, and
It was.
you had
And
a
these people were
nudist.
all over, yeah, they were all over the country. So participants all over the country. But you're absolutely right. I've got the platform that we pay for and what we have, which is really kind of nice. But it's like, so I can, like, right now in this podcast, we're seeing each other, but like in another screen, the clients could be talking to me or sending me messages, and I can see them both on their video and their audio, and they can talk, but the participants have no idea. So they're hearing
Wow.
everything. And in a way, another reason why it can be distracting too, because the client might say, like if somebody asks a question about somebody's brand and I don't know the answer to that, or a new product that's coming out, the client can tell me and I can start to relay some of that. So it's pretty intense, but it's a great platform. And that's something new that has been, that we've been working with for a while.
Well, I just want to be clear too. It wasn't me. I was not the naked man walking
No,
back
no,
and
no, it
forth. Now,
wasn't.
I don't wear pants for the show, but that's a separate issue. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so focus groups, it's great lead in, and we'll get to our final thoughts here. But so what has changed in focus groups? You mentioned the book. The fundamentals are all the same. I mean, a lot of the things that we do in marketing, and this is something probably that would warrant an entire episode, but one of the bees in my bonnet about marketing is that people keep renaming things to make them new again. And I'll hear a term, and I'm not young anymore. I look very young though.
You do, and you are a lot younger than me.
I'm much older than I look and younger than I feel. And this is the oldest I've ever been, by the way, so I don't have much of a point of comparison. But I'll hear something and I'll be like, wow, I've never heard of that. And I'll look into it a little bit more and I'm like, oh, come on, it's the same thing. You just made up a new name, which just really serves to confuse the market. And so marketers are genius at making up meaningless new names that confuse everybody. But focus groups have kind of changed. And is it the technology that changes the dynamic? Or tell me a little bit, like if you were to update that book, what kinds of things would you be looking at?
Yeah, I would definitely add some of the stuff with regard to the technology. So, and for example, I'll give you something right now. So in our platform, we could be conducting a focus group and I can actually do a poll live, and I could either decide to show it to everybody or I could just give the answers and show the poll after everybody has responded. And we can immediately say, okay, wow, everybody said this privately, what's going on? And then you can ask questions about that. So that has really changed the game. So it's much more interactive. It's much quicker. So that, in my opinion, has changed a lot. I think the other thing with regard to the online ones is it's just so much less expensive, Pete. You know what I mean? Like before, we would have to pay a facility, which I love doing the in-person ones. I think you get a lot of good information out of there. But it's like people might have been traveling from all over the country. So you're paying for that. The client's paying for that. They're paying for the meals. They're paying for the room. They're paying for us. So it's a lot of expense. I mean, I think it's worth it. And by the way, there's lots of ways you can do it that's less expensive, rent a hotel room or whatever the case is. But now you can do this virtually and get great people, and they can do it from the comforts of their own laptop computer. So it's just so much quicker and easier. It sounds like less expensive.
You can have more participants, so less expensive, better data, more options for the facilitator. I would say those are sea changes in how focus groups are conducted, and probably the quality of the output that comes from it. But I'm a big believer in them. I don't think that we see them done as often as maybe they should be.
Yeah.
But
I love them. And you asked another reason for it, and this would be another great reason. Like you could do a focus group just to like if you were going to do a customer survey or a brand survey, you could do a focus group to begin with a sampling of your customers or whatever, just to help you design the survey of asking good questions. Or on the reverse, you could do the exact same thing. You get your data back that's quantitative, and you go, wow, we've got some questions about this. You could have a focus group and really have the audience explain what's going on with your findings. I mean, it's just powerful stuff.
Yeah. No, I think it's awesome. Why don't we'll head to our final thoughts as we're wrapping up the program here. It's 11:33 precisely. And so, final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
It still sounds like the Chipmunks to me on that. I don't know why. But final thoughts. Go, you first.
Even like I always promise people with regard to when I do some research for them, quantitative, I always promise I will bring them surprises, because you always have a client or two that will always say, oh, I already know it all. I always bring them surprises. The beauty of a focus group is it's real time. It's like all of a sudden, and that's by the way, another thing with a skilled facilitator. You got to know, am I going down a rabbit hole, or is this genius material that's emerging that we are just on top of here? And that is so exciting, because when you walk away with something so new or so fresh, you really got some magic going on there. And that usually happens in a focus group. So
yeah, I think it's the face-to-face nature of it or something. There's just a dynamic about focus groups that's different from other kinds of research. And I think research is actually one of my favorite parts of marketing because it is those aha moments. It's the things that we didn't think of, the client didn't think of, but the customers know. And we do other types of research. We do competitive intelligence. And we often find things in there that nobody knew, like a new competitor who's gaining ground really rapidly. Wow, and so if your information is 3, 4, 5 years old, you really need to refresh it. And it doesn't matter, Bill can help you choose the research vehicle that is right for you, that fits your budget, that makes sense for the problems you're trying to solve. There's lots and lots of choices in how you can get answers. But the point is, you got to get answers. You can't keep running off of, I've met clients that are running off of 20-year-old data. They still think that, the world operates like it did in 2012.
Yeah, I told you, I ran into somebody this summer who their sales had plateaued for 3 years in a row. And I asked them when was the last time they had done some customer research. And like you said, it was over 20 years ago. I was like, I didn't even know how to respond to that. I guess I was a terrible facilitator because I looked shocked and horrified, But so you're right. It's like, how can you be in business without getting some of that kind of information, especially when it's changing so rapidly,
In fact, maybe next week a good topic would be to talk about lead generation. And because the entire lead generation landscape has changed, and there's a guy, talk about him a lot on here, Chris Walker. I'm going to try to get him as a guest someday. He's kind of a big shot. We'll see how that goes. But he talks about this a lot, where back in 2012, it was emails and names and people that downloaded a paper or signed up for something, and that was considered a lead. That is not how it works anymore. And so if you're still doing that, and I think the majority of companies are, hopefully maybe next week we can share, what does that look like now for B2B companies? And I want to mention that a lot of what we talk about applies to B2C as well. And so, don't ignore us if you have a business to consumer type of company or a direct to consumer. That's an exploding field now. Yeah. A lot of these fundamental things fit everything, but we had to, of course, select a niche. And so we selected B2B. And so that's primarily what we talk about. But I think that would be a great topic because, at the end of the day, that's a lot of the reason that people do marketing in the first place is they're trying to drive more opportunities. They're trying to close more opportunities. And I like to think that, we have some hand in helping kind of help companies do that better.
Yeah. And this will be fun because
I could be delusional.
That means next week I'll probably be the facilitator because you're the world expert on some of that lead generation and what to do about it. So I better come prepared to ask you good questions, huh?
I like to think so, but I wonder sometimes. But hey, another great episode in the can. Appreciate everybody that tunes in, and thank you. Let's thank iTunes podcast, Apple Podcast. We have the most subscribers. We have the most subscribers on Apple Podcasts. So by a long shot, Spotify's coming up second. But you can find this podcast at b2bmarketingmindset.com, usually a day after it goes live. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can see it there. Or you can just go to your favorite podcast platform and find it there. And you might have to search on our names or my name and then B2B Marketing Mindset. Some of them, I think they're hard to find. Their interfaces are not great. I'm looking at you, Spotify. But we are there. And, subscribe. You can subscribe on YouTube. Now, of course, I mentioned we're on Twitter and Facebook. We are everywhere, people. And so I hope you like the program. Give us some suggestions for the naming of the theme.
That'd be great.
And the lucky winner. What does the lucky winner get if we choose their name?
Let's think about that.
A Home Depot gift card.
Oh, there you go. We could do that. Otherwise, what about an hour with us? Just
an hour with us.
About their business.
Talk about their business. Help us name the tune. We'll choose the tune, and we could have them on the podcast. The winner of the
Hey, actually, that would be a great idea.
I think
that would
that's
be a great idea, and then we can talk about their business or their opportunity or what they're looking for. Might be an interesting thing.
There you go. So help us out in the comments. We'll see you next week, Thursdays, 11
No, we
o'clock
won't.
Central,
Happy Thanksgiving, right?
everywhere, and have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Get that wheelbarrow ready to wheel you away from the table,
There you go.
American style. So until next week, thanks, Bill.
You've
Bye.
been
Thank you,
listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. Add to the conversation by commenting, sharing, and liking. And don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.